I got to ask you, because I talked to a bunch of your friends all around the country, and the one thing I took away from everybody was that here's a hardworking person who, even after 30 or 40 years, is still leaving the office at 9 o'clock. Why do you stay that late? Why are you still driven at a time when most people would kind of take it easy a little bit?
Well, I've always cared about what I do. So for me, if you don't love what you do, and if you don't want to really do the very best you can, you should do something else. And I've never, fortunately, been in that position.
Have you ever thought, if I'm not in politics, there's something dramatically different that I'd do?
Well, I never thought I'd be in politics.
President of the student government at Wellesley, never thought she'd be?
No, I really, I thought that I would be involved in policy, that I would work as an advocate. I care deeply about a lot of issues, particularly affecting children and women, and that's what I saw myself doing. And of course, when I met Bill in law school, that seemed to make a lot of sense. So I don't really have any unfulfilled desires when it comes to professional activities. I mean, I wish I were a marathon runner. I wish I were a great swimmer.
Is that right?
All of that stuff. But when it comes to my work, I love what I do.
Now, when you say marathon and all that, is that because you actually enjoy doing those, but you don't have time, or because you...
No, because I'm such a slow runner.
Okay,
I run like a turtle. I'm the worst runner. When I was a little girl and I'd be in races, I always came in last. I mean,
were you chosen last for kickball and all that kind of good stuff?
No, kickball I was okay at. Kickball and softball, but anything having to do with running, I really was pathetic. Yeah.
Wow. So all right, so when you do have a little downtime, which obviously we know is not much, what do you do for fun? What do you enjoy doing?
I love my house in New York, and Bill and I go for long walks through some of the most beautiful, wooded countryside and state parks and along the Hudson River and just so much else. We go to movies a lot. We eat out. I mean, it's pretty typical.
What kind of movies?
Well, we always have a debate because, Bill is a big action fan, and
Action as in kind of Sylvester Stallone?
Absolutely. Every one of those.
Okay.
I mean, that is, that's what he loves. He finds it relaxing. I'm cringing. I can't bear to see people blown to smithereens. Don't tell me
you're not going for the romance movies, are you?
Absolutely. Romance, relationship stories. Yes. So we alternate.
Because you guys obviously have interacted with all sorts of stars. They come to the White House and other places. Anyone ever, made you have a lump in your throat? You were nervous to meet any of the...
Oh, all the time.
Like who?
Oh, well, I think the first really big movie star I ever met was back in Arkansas. Gregory Peck came.
Wow.
And, that was, for me, huge. A lot of your listeners probably won't even know who Gregory Peck is, but I mean, it was very exciting. Some of them are still just extraordinary. Like Sophia Loren can walk into a room and everybody just goes, oh, I mean, you're so beautiful, and she's so nice. And, we have lots of friends in television or in movies.
I was surprised, the more I talked to your friends, they said, you've got to remember that Hillary in her heart is an old-time child advocate, that's what she cares about. And so I was kind of surprised that you only had one kid.
Right. Well, that's the way it worked out. Unfortunately, we would have loved to have had more kids, but we were lucky with the draw that we got. So I was I'm very grateful.
Did you and the president ever think seriously about adopting?
Well, when we started thinking about it, he was in the public eye, and it would have been really hard for any child. I mean, I just can't even imagine the kind of pressure that child would have been under. But it is true that for me, the core of what I do and what I care about has to do with kids, particularly kids who face, tough odds, who don't have all the breaks in life, who don't have, parents or family members who are standing there supporting them and loving them and guiding them and cheering them on. And, kids in the foster care system really tug at my heart. We just don't do enough to help those kids.
What does work to get those kids in healthy homes and on a healthy track that you've seen?
Right. Well, the first thing is to really try to help get the families back on their feet so that they can have their children back. Secondly, look for other relatives. Like, look for grandparents, look for aunts and uncles. Don't take the child and put the child in the foster care system and lose track of that child. If you could find a grandparent and give that grandparent some help so the grandparent can have the same help that a foster parent would have, but to keep the child.
This was your mother's case.
That's right. Well, that's really where I think my first passion for this came from. She was essentially abandoned by her young parents, went to live with her father's parents, mistreated and the rest, and left home at the age of 13 and moved in with a family. But here's where it really does make a difference. A child who has someone, whether it's a neighbor, a coach, a preacher, whoever it might be, who believes in that child, we know that can make a difference. And in my mother's case, it was this woman who let her continue going to high school. I mean, she had to get up early in the morning and take care of the children of the family, and she had to come right home after school. But
there really was a relationship.
There was a relationship, and there was stability, and there was a good model. And so if we're not going to be able to return kids to their families, even the extended family, then how quickly can we move them into a permanent, loving home?
Can I take you back to your college thesis?
Sure.
So I understand you wrote about Saul Alinsky, the
Right.
Chicago organizer, and the
Right.
whole conversation around revolution versus reform. Do you work within the system and try and reform it? You ever, I know back then you kind of, jumped on the side of reform and said, this country can work. Do you ever pause these days and say to yourself, you know what, if I was poor and I grew up in Cabrini Green projects of Chicago instead of the suburbs of Chicago, that would just be a crazy perspective?
No, because I still think there is no better place to live and grow up in the history of the world than in the United States.
And you don't think that's Pollyannish?
No.
You don't think that...
I think the evidence is overwhelming. I mean, when I go and speak to groups here at home or literally around the world, there is no better place to be a woman than in the United States of America, and no better time than in the 21st century. Now, does that mean you still face tough choices? Life is not always fair. It's not always easy. There's still a double standard, all of that. But where else could you have the opportunity to come so close as to realize your God-given potential? But that requires, it's not only the opportunity that's offered, yes, you have to work hard for it. Nothing's handed to you.
It's a responsibility.
It's a responsibility.
So you gave the commencement at Yale, and of all the things you could have talked about, you said it's all about the hair.
The most important thing that I have to say today is that hair matters.
So how's this hairstyle working for you?
Well, it seems to be pretty good because nobody talks about it anymore.
Okay.
But maybe that's good news for a change.
Let me ask you, because I say there's a lot of the Midwesterner there in you, and yet you're always seeing the Time magazine stories that say that you're disliked or that there's strong animus against you. A, do you really believe that? And B, if so, why do you think there's strong dislike out there?
I really don't know. I really don't spend a lot of time worrying about what people think about me. I spend my time worrying about what I'm going to do and how I think about myself. Because at the end of the day,
is that really true? You really don't spend much time?
I can't. I mean, I would be totally paralyzed. I mean, how could you get up in the morning if you worried about some poll or what somebody said about you? I mean, that's giving up power over your life to somebody else, and I don't intend to do that. I mean, if somebody meets me and says, I just don't agree with you. I don't agree with your politics. I don't think we have to worry about the deficit. I don't care whether we ever get a healthcare system that takes care of everybody. Fine, that's a legitimate difference. But, for people to say, well, I heard this and I heard that, we have to try to dispel that.
So who should they see you as then? I mean, you draw a good point. You want people to see you as you really are. If you were describing Hillary for someone else, you know what I mean? If you were trying to describe your friend Hillary to someone else, how would you describe Hillary?
Guess what? She's a real person. I mean, just like everybody else. She, she has ups and downs. She works hard. She plays hard. She has a great time. She loves her country. Those are things about me that are really important to me. I want to be a good friend. I want to be a good wife and mother. I want to be a good senator. I want to do the best jobs that I can do in my life. And, people will have to make their own judgments about that.